shit as we do, except a little different. Now, if you go into a movie theater in Amsterdam, you can buy a glass of beer. Not a paper cup, a glass of beer. Now, in Paris, you can buy a glass of beer in McDonald's. You know what a quarter pounder with cheese is called in Paris? Well, they wouldn't know what a quarter pounder is. They have a metric system. But it's called a Royale with cheese. And you know what a Big Mac is? A Big Mac's a Big Mac. But they call it Le Mac, Le Big Mac.
Okay. That's a good beginning. All right. I want you to make a choice now. Okay. There are a number of things, okay, that we could say for you to choose from out of where you have begun and with yourself and talking and everything, to give it for you a solidity. And I'm not now talking about the fact that you're in process with it, which is fine, which keeps it a little, but I'm talking about a solidity that comes from a kind of focus, and a kind of focus that comes from either who are you talking to, and I mean really who, really and truly who, a very specific person, choosing that person so that it feeds what you are saying in some fashion. In other words, as an example, if you were talking to somebody who's dead against any form of drugs, right, then you're talking one thing, right? If you're talking to somebody who you've been having this ongoing argument with about drugs, about Europe, about here, about food, about people, or whatever it is, you know, and you've got a couple of stories that top anything they have to say about their experiences or where they've been or what they've done or what they've seen or whatever. So you're coming from that one-upmanship place out of your experience of being in Europe and in Paris and all of that. So that could be, it could be from that perspective, right? So in regard to, if you wanted to choose in the neighborhood of who are you talking to, so I don't just mean who you're talking to as in because it's a person that you know. I mean so specifically a person whose attitude, point of view, or absolute relationship with you that would be organic to the material. I mean, you could choose 5 people who you have a relationship with, but it wouldn't influence strongly the nature of your conversation. But there might be one person, for example, that you have as a friend that you're always in competition with. No matter what you say, they say. No matter what they say, you say. You know, so that kind of thing could be a choice. Because that not only, of course, makes it who you're talking to, but of course it gives it a life out of which you are speaking, right? Okay, so there's that area of choice. Then there's the area of what, regardless of who you're speaking to, what is your state of being? In other words, are you high? And you're talking about, you know, I mean, because the person's just said, you know, I mean, here we are, and you're high, and the cop's going to come, and, you know, I mean, for God's sake, you know, or whatever, and you launch into your story about drugs in Europe and everything. It's got nothing to do with it, but do you know what I mean? Because you're high, right? So you're talking about, listen here, you know, not everything's as, you know, the way it is here, kind of thing. So it could come out of that. It could come out of that, you know, you're absolutely snorted up, smoked up, all of the above, right? Okay. And so you have to really work on that right now. So it could be your state of being, or it could be your state of being the opposite of that. It could be that you need a fix. It could be that you are an addict and you need a fix. You really need a fix. And that is making you talk about this. But it would come out of that state of being, of needing a fix. And so talking about it is like getting one. Often, when people are very, very hungry, they'll talk about food. Oh my God, isn't that delicious? And it's sort of like substitute, right, for actually having the meal, I often, when I think of this kind of thing, I went through a period of time in New York. I was first in New York, and it was a whole thing, and I could look at a menu, see, all right, and try to decide what I wanted to order, and could not decide what I wanted to order, all right? But what I would do, and it's absolutely where I know that this information comes from. Let's say if I looked and it said a hamburger with when I ate meat then, a hamburger with this and with that and this kind of, the whole kind of thing. Well, if I really read it, and thought about the hamburger, and thought about what they put on there, and thought about all the things, by the time I got to the end of reading about it, I felt as if I'd eaten the hamburger, so I'd say, well, I don't want that. It's the truth. It's the God's truth. Then I go to the next thing. Okay, I go through that whole part. By the time I looked at the whole menu, Eli, my former husband, he would say to me, I'd say, I'm not really hungry. I don't really want anything to eat. I had eaten. I had absolutely eaten. I'd eaten all this food, and I think I'll have a cup of coffee. That's the only thing I hadn't eaten. And it's really true. And it was like that is a place in which I really discovered this truth, that if you really, and you go into, that tastes like, and it's really connected to sense memory. Of course, that's not what I was thinking about, or thinking that's what I was doing, but that is precisely what it is. If you really take the time, the hamburger, yeah, well, I could, and then, you do the whole thing and all of the thing. You've had a sense memory, and in fact, you've tasted, smelled, and to some degree, eaten. And especially if you're a person who always had no appetite anyway, you've eaten it. You really have. Or if you come across something you don't like, the same thing. So it's a very interesting phenomenon. So the same kind of process in discussing something is like having it. And if you come from a place where, let's say, not what I'm talking about of not being hungry, but of, let's say, being hungry or needing a fix, and you start talking about it, you're giving yourself a fix. You're having a fix. So, and it applies to many, 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 many things. If you start exploring and thinking about it, you will see. So, in other words, I'm just making some suggestions, and many others, out of any of those that appeal to you. Pick one. We're working. Pick one. Pick whichever one or another one, if something else came to your mind, other than what I was saying, but that you're thinking of. Pick one. Let that be where you're coming from, and speak out of that.